So in Vajrayana, the guru is essential. It's from the guru that we receive the instructions and empowerment. And the term Samaya is particularly used in Vajrayana, which means having received an empowerment. During the process of the empowerment, you took an oath to uphold the Samaya. Whether you know it or not, you did, if you've had an empowerment. So, as I say, I've noticed over the years that a lot of us are not very clear about what that involves. And in different sanghas, different places I've been or people I've talked to, Samaya, in some circles, Samaya is tossed around quite a bit and mentioned quite a bit amongst the Vajra brothers and sisters. And I don't think that it's completely understood. So I'm referring to Chokta Rinpoche's teachings on Samaya here today, and on the teachings of Dejan Rinpoche, who I first heard the enumerations of the what are called the root downfalls of the Anuttara Yoga. So that's what, and also I want to cover how to purify negative karma in general, and touch on how do I say, why it's possible to purify karma. There are divisions in there's many divisions or many categories of Samaya. Samaya, the word Samaya in Tibetan is damtik, damtik. And dam sometimes is translated as sacred, and tik means a word, sacred word, or we could say sacred commitment. Dam also means to bind. To bind, to bind up or commit. And Sikh also means, and this is in the teachings of Samaya, how they break the word down. Sikh also can mean burn. Burn. So that's more the has to do with breaking Samaya, the burning of breaking Samaya. Sometimes we have seen that when you break Samaya, or we've heard that when you break Samaya, then you go to Vajra hell. And then depending on who's talking that way, then you hear different interpretations of what that might mean. Interminable. What is interminable? It means endless burning by violating or breaking your Samaya commitment. We hear that. It's not good to break Samaya. That we have to understand. And so that's why I want to go over what that means in a functional kind of way. A lot of people think that, or say that, if you don't do what your guru says, then you'll go to Vajra hell. And during the empowerment, we do voice a commitment to obey the guru. We always repeat that. At every empowerment, you've repeated that. Whatever the guru commands, that I will do. But just to make sure we understand that, it's not the case that you have to do something that you're not capable of doing. And if your guru does demand something or say something that you can't do, then you should say so. I just want to say that up front. It's not this draconian system. Anyway, Samaya. Samaya, there's many different Samayas. We read in the confession how there's tens of thousands. Sometimes you see millions of Samayas. And it depends on the how it's presented, depends on the kind of level that's being discussed. And then there's a distinction between the Nyingma and Sarma, the early translation school and the later translation school, the newer translation school. And then there's the Vay's empowerment, when, of course, we know that you've received the 4 levels of empowerment: the Vay's empowerment, the secret empowerment, the wisdom empowerment, and the word empowerment. Each empowerment has its own Samaya. to uphold. And then there's Dzogchen in the Great Perfection. There's the 4 Samayas. And then Nyingmas, they have we have what are called the 27 Samayas. And then there's the 5 Samayas. And then and so on. So there's many Samayas. Since it's always the case that the higher in the Dharma teachings, the higher teachings always include the lower teachings. And as it says, it's impossible for the lower teachings to include the higher teachings. And so on the level of vows and commitments, the Vajrayana includes the vows and commitments of the Bodhisattvayana and the individual liberation, the Pratimoksha, the Hinayana. So it's sort of all inclusive. Let's see. Okay. So in that sense, then the first level of keeping Samaya is on the level of individual discipline that you follow to ensure your own liberation. And this is very much connected to the vow of refuge, taking refuge in the 3 jewels. And this discipline to uphold is basically the approach of harmlessness, non-harming. And through that, one ensures one's own liberation from suffering. seeking, and so in all your actions, verbal and behavior, physical actions and thoughts, we seek out and uproot all harmful aspects as best as we can. And so taking a refuge vow, that is to say, committing yourself to enlightenment, to the path of liberation, is a commitment, a Samaya commitment, to live as harmless a life as possible. In that regard, then when you take the refuge vow, there are three aspects to remember, to practice. One is, or to avoid. One is to avoid seeking refuge in what are called worldly gods. By worldly gods, what that can refer to is those refuges that we seek that are not free of transition or change, that are not free of karma. So it's that once you take refuge, when we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, then we should, it's something that is the result of some sort of thinking and examining your life and deciding to take refuge in the three jewels. So having taken refuge in the Buddha, then there's no point in taking refuge in anything other than Buddha. You become a Buddhist. People like to say that, and we can say that you're a Buddhist. That means that you deal with things in your own mind with an understanding, or with a growing understanding and the dawning of some faith that that's where the answer lies to your problems. And you can end your searching for refuge and focus on the Dharma. And taking refuge in the Dharma means then to avoid harming beings. As I mentioned. And taking refuge in the Sangha means respecting your companions on the path and not judging them based on your habitual ways that you judge others, but you see them as fellow travelers on the path to Buddhahood, each according to their own, like what they're bringing. Everyone is bringing themselves to that path. All their rough edges and stubborn personalities, but they all share the same aspiration to attain awakening as you do. So then you have respect for them as a Buddhist. Sometimes Sangha would never be friends that you would seek out. But they are your Dharma family, just like you don't seek out who your brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles are, but they're family. Then further on this Samaya commitment of refuge is the context of the Mahayana way of taking refuge, which gives a different dimension to that vow of refuge. You don't take refuge here simply for your own sake and simply for this lifetime, but you take refuge for the benefit of all beings until you attain enlightenment. So the whole time frame and the scope is larger, is greater in the Mahayana context. Maha means grand or great. Yana means vehicle, approach. So this whole time frame and the scope is greater. It's not seeking your own personal enlightenment, your own personal liberation from suffering, but the enlightenment for all sentient, for the sake of all sentient beings. And you make that commitment until you attain that kind of awakening. Actually, at that point, then you don't take refuge, you become refuge. You become a refuge to others. And the mood or the atmosphere that you take refuge for the sake of others is with a recognition that all beings have in some lifetime since beginning with samsara, have been your kind and generous and gracious parents, mother and father, in lifetime, many lifetimes, lifetime after lifetime. So recognizing that you have this intimate and important, meaningful connection with all beings is included in this first aspect of Samaya, and how you uphold the vow of refuge. And so we train in refuge with this motivation, and as much as you're able to maintain that commitment and motivation, that's wonderful. But it's not it's not going to be perfect. There will be times when, due to our habitual habits, samsaric habits, that we will not maintain that commitment. We won't be able to. We lose the recognition of all beings having been our parents. Or we drift in our intention to awaken to perfect enlightenment for their sake. And so when we fall short, it's important then to acknowledge that, to catch yourself, and to reaffirm that vow of refuge. When we take refuge, we study and learn exactly what it is we're taking refuge in. What is Buddha? What is Dharma? What is Sangha? All the different dimensions to those objects of refuge. And who is taking refuge? I and all sentient beings who have been my mother, my father, my benefactor. For how long do I take refuge? From now, this very moment, until attaining a state of perfect awakening. How do I take refuge? I take refuge with my body, my speech, my mind. Why? Why take refuge? Because ignorance of my true nature is the root cause of all suffering, all my problems, all my emotional aches and pains and physical aches and pains, all are rooted in not recognizing my own true nature. And so I take refuge in that very nature and seek out ways to uproot those habits that cause suffering. And I'll do that until I attain that state of perfect awakening. Why not? And so when you catch yourself in falling short of that practice, when you see that you're seeking other means of liberation, then you regard those, the three jewels, as being a witness to your confession, to your acknowledging your shortcomings. And resolve not to do that again in the future. So this acknowledgement and reinforcing that with a resolution to uphold that vow is part of this Samaya, and to have confidence that through the blessing and compassion of the three jewels, you and others can be purified through this resolve. Purified of this this negativity within you. It's the cause of suffering, and purified of the suffering that results from such negativity. Both the cause and the result can be purified. So this is the first aspect of Samaya, which is the Samaya of the refuge. And the second aspect on this what's called the Bodhisattvayana or the Mahayana, is the Bodhisattva vow. Like a Vajrayana Samaya incorporates, as I say, this individual vow of refuge, and also then this second aspect, the Bodhisattva vow. And this involves, again, recognizing for you as a practitioner that all beings not just those who you have a positive connection, but even and especially those who cause you harm. All of those you recognize as having been your kind parents in some lifetime and have received the same basic kindness from them. So the Bodhisattva vow begins with that understanding. And by gaining more and more familiarity through the efforts of contemplation, meditation, then there will arise a certainty of that positive connection you have with all beings, even those who currently appear to be your enemies or are, how do we say, adversely disposed towards you. So the essence of this Bodhisattva vow is in not forgetting that positive connection you have with all beings and honoring it, elevating, making that positive connection you have with all beings the driving force of your life, of your vow. And again, because of our habitual ignorance and samsaric habits and delusion, we often fall short of that and forget that fact. We're unable to remember that positive heart connection we have with others from moment to moment, especially when we become, the object of aggression or some negative stance that others take towards us. But we should be assured and remember that connection is still there. Or like a parent who forgot they had children, or a child who forgets their parents. Enlightened beings like Buddha and the great bodhisattvas have the eye of wisdom and are able to view the situation of ordinary beings and actually see those connections clearly. And see lifetime after lifetime how we have all been serving as the parents of each other. And so when the Buddhas, through their Vajra speech, the truth of their Vajra speech, then we should have confidence in that fact, that we have this intimate connection with others, even though presently we can't recognize it. And it's likely the case that for most of us and for most of the time, we that connection is not clear. Instead, we invest ourselves in strife and conflict and negativity. But that doesn't mean that that connection is not there. It simply means that we're not able to be aware of it. And not being aware of it, we don't know how to act. So we're not able to be aware of it, nor able to act on the basis of that awareness. And so this Bodhisattva Samaya then is to always strive to remain conscious of this positive connection that we have with everything that lives. And since we, in our own personal context, want to be happy and avoid suffering, we should strive to respond to beings with love, in the sense of wishing them to be happy, and with compassion, hoping and wishing them to be free of suffering. And with that effort of that love and compassion, then there comes a joy. When we contemplate a situation where beings are happy and free of suffering, that is the source of our joy. It's not where our practice should be, our meditation, that is to say, how we train our mind should be balanced. That is to say, in this case, then we should, of course, it's because of our training and understanding karma, infallibility of cause, infallible connection between causes and their effects, and these underlying samsaric habits based on ignorance of we have ignorance, samsaric habits, and self-clinging, conceit, feeling separated and somehow better, I guess you could say, than everyone else, that we act and create karma that causes us to suffer. And that's so all-pervasive that we can get lost in it, out of balance. So on the path of the Mahayana, on the Bodhisattva path, and we should wish others not to have the effects of suffering, and wish for others not to engage in the causes of suffering. We say, may all sentient beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, which is non-virtue. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness, which is virtue. We also should visualize and imagine what beings would feel like when they are free of suffering and the causes of suffering. When they are happy and enjoying the actions that cause happiness. We should appreciate or contemplate that again and again. And then there's the training in impartiality, which is a willingness to respond to all beings without your personal prejudices getting in the way of who you would like to feel compassion towards, who you would like to express your love towards, free of that, impartially, why you would withhold your love for someone who's negative, a negative person. So impartiality is to be free of your personal opinions or prejudices about who's who you should wish to be happy. Impartiality. So the Bodhisattva vow, the Samaya of the Bodhisattva vow is to contemplate these four attitudes of love, compassion, joy, and impartiality, and make them grow from specifics to the specifics, from 1 to 2 individuals to 10 to 50 to 1,000, incrementally increasing it to a point of open-ended immeasurability. And then you combine that attitude, those attitudes, with your resolve to dedicate your body, your behavior, your physical actions, your speech, and your thoughts and ways of thinking to the benefit of all beings. So when you are about to undertake any action, whether it's like a formal practice or anything, motivate yourself initially with this sincere wish to benefit all beings through this single action. And at the end of that act, whether it's scooping up an insect that so it won't get squashed, and then sending it outside or do your meditation practice and it ends, then you dedicate any positive results of what you have done to the benefit of all beings in general and specifically to their enlightenment. And that's a dedication of that act. So release any hope and fear about it. As a dedication, and then aspire that through that action you and all beings move closer and closer towards liberation, towards wisdom, and ultimately that each and every one of you, each and every one of us will awaken to the omniscient state of perfect Buddhahood. So that's the kind of aspiration that you apply to all of your activities as a way of upholding your Samaya on this level. So regardless of how insignificant or small an act may be, if you do it with this vast motivation, then it's something truly powerful and meaningful, even though it just seems something small and insignificant. Like Rinpoche, Chakta Rinpoche always used to say that there's this expression that virtue and harm just slip out of your mouth and slip out of your fingers, meaning that anything you do can turn into a positive or a negative direction. Everything has a significance. So anything, any circumstance or any opportunity can be used one sign of really being moderately trained in this level of Samaya is that you have the feeling that every minute there's a choice you have as to how your mind will go. And so you always take that creating virtue path rather than being indifferent or negative. Always feel that there's a gap that you can convert whatever you're doing into virtue. So this is this second aspect of Samaya having to do with the Bodhisattva approach, or approaching enlightenment as a Bodhisattva. Then there's this third aspect, which is the Vajrayana Samaya. And the way Rinpoche taught this is that, as I mentioned earlier, when we have received an empowerment, there's the vase empowerment. The first empowerment is the vase empowerment, which is associated with the body, physical body, or the body. Or we could say form, rupa. And in the context of the vase empowerment, your potential is presented to introduce you to the fact that the outer inanimate world around us and all the animate life forms within the world, that world, even your own mind and body, is by its very nature a state of purity, and always has been. Timeless purity, not the kind of purity that is the result of, when we talk about confessions and resolves going forward, purifying negative action. But on a Vajrayana, from the Vajrayana point of view, things have always been pure. And so you're introduced to that fact in the context of the empowerment. Even though it's likely that after having received an empowerment, water's still water, rocks are still hard, and nothing particularly seems to have changed. But it's important to remember that once you're introduced to that fact, all that's keeping you from the direct experience of that fact, that total purity, is your own old habits that are afflicting your mind. That's all. In fact, just accepting that is good. Things are already pure, but like a, what did he say, like a Rinpoche always talked about somebody who has a liver disease, hepatitis, or something like that, then what the snow mountain looks yellow, or a white conch shell, they say. You look at it, it looks yellow because of the jaundice. Even in English, we use that expression, jaundiced, as a, even though it's a medical condition, it's also used as a way of expressing how you have a distorted view of things, isn't it? Isn't that right? It's a jaundiced view. And so understanding that is important, and approaching this as in approaching Vajrayana. Vajrayana is not introducing something new, is something that you haven't, it's new to you. And that jaundiced mind we have, that afflicted mind or infected mind, can be dealt with. Definitely, absolutely dealt with. we have this expression in Vajrayana called original purity. In the Chenrezig Chakra Rinpoche's Chenrezig text, it says Kadak Lode, Kadak Lode, means original purity is beyond ordinary consciousness. Ordinary consciousness meaning our afflicted mind, not our pure mind or true mind or genuine mind. So to say that the world and we ourselves are in this timeless state of original purity is not merely pretense, where we pretend that impure things are pure. So regardless of how things still seem to, we have been introduced to that fact, to that nature that is the inherent and timeless purity of everything. And so remembering that fact, remember what you have been introduced to, and have the certainty in your mind that even though you don't now have that direct experience, it still is the case. Total purity is the nature of everything, and it's only our habit patterns that are in the way. All that has to occur is to remove those habits. And then what has always been the case will become obvious, will become made evident. So this is the fabric, or this is the having confidence in that is part of the Samaya, of the vase empowerment level. And so this also ties in here with the practice of deity yoga, the generation or development stage in the Vajrayana. And when you come away with, when you come away from an empowerment with a deity yoga practice and begin to meditate with this altruistic motivation, and you begin by taking refuge, arousing bodhicitta, and developing the visualization of the mandala of the deity. What you're meditating on is that fact of the timeless purity of the entire world and the beings who inhabit that world. As Rinpoche says, the inanimate world is the realm of bliss, the pure realm of the deity. All beings are the gods and goddesses of the mandala. You yourself are the deity of supreme compassion. All of this you meditate on from the perspective of the ultimate nature of this, so that even as the visualization manifests, the nature of all that manifests is and always has been this state of utter purity, beyond concepts, essence of enlightened mind manifesting in this particular way. So the deity that we meditate on is an expression of this enlightened state of being. It's not a symbol of it. It is part and parcel of it. It is an expression of it.